There are 4 feelings inside you right now that you were never actually born with. You think they're yours. You think they're proof that you're human, that you're alive, that you're paying attention to the world the right way. But somewhere a long time ago, someone looked underneath those feelings and saw something else. Not emotion, not nature, a design placed there, according to old esoteric memory, by forces the ancient mystics called the Archons. That someone who saw underneath was Mary Magdalene. Not the version you've heard about, not the quiet woman standing at the edge of old paintings, half in shadow, never given a full sentence of her own. The version almost nobody talks about, the one who understood that certain rulers of this lower world, the ones ancient mystics called the Archons, didn't build walls or chains to keep the human soul trapped here. They didn't need to. Walls can be climbed. Chains can be broken. What they built instead was quieter than that, and far harder to escape. They built feelings. 4 of them. And once those feelings were placed inside you, you stopped looking for the exit, because you forgot there ever was one. I want to walk you through this slowly, because it changes the way you feel by tomorrow morning. It changed the way I feel almost every day since I really sat with it. Not in some dramatic, lightning bolt way. More like a slow loosening of something I didn't even know was tight. Stay with me. This isn't a lecture. This is something closer to a memory you're about to get back. Here's something that bothers me, and it's bothered me for a long time. For centuries, Mary Magdalene gets reduced to a footnote, a side character, someone defined by what she supposedly was before, never by what she actually understood. History loves to do that to women who knew too much. It shrinks them down until only the smallest, easiest version survives. I think that's not an accident. I think someone wanted her quiet. In the deeper esoteric tradition, the one that lives outside of official religious history, Mary Magdalene isn't a footnote at all. She's described as the one who saw clearest. Not because she was given special permission, not because someone handed her authority, but because she was paying attention in a way almost nobody else around her was. Some accounts even place her closer to Jesus than almost anyone else in his circle, not as a follower trailing behind, but as someone walking right alongside the deepest part of his teaching. She watched the inner world the way other people watched the outer one. While others were focused on what was happening in front of them, she was watching what was happening underneath. There's a quiet detail that I keep coming back to, one that sits with me longer than it probably should. In several Gnostic circles, and by Gnostic, I just mean the early mystics who believed truth was something you experienced directly, not something handed to you by an institution. Mary Magdalene is remembered as someone who unsettled the other followers. Not because she said anything wrong, because she understood something they hadn't reached yet, and being near someone who sees further than you can feel like being near a light that's slightly too bright. And what she understood, according to that older esoteric current, is that the human soul wasn't just living in a physical trap. It was living inside an emotional one. A finer trap. A trap made of feeling instead of stone, which is honestly a more dangerous kind of trap, because stone you can see. Feeling, you usually can't. I don't think that idea is comfortable. I think it's supposed to be uncomfortable. Comfort doesn't wake people up. Friction does. And if you're still here with me, a little uncomfortable, good. That means something in you is already listening past the surface. So let's talk about who built that trap in the first place. In the oldest esoteric cosmology, the universe isn't just stars and planets stacked neatly on top of each other like something tidy and finished. It's layered, dense at the bottom, lighter the higher you go, like sediment settling in water over thousands of years. And in those lower layers live what the old mystics called Archons, a word that simply means rulers. Not rulers of countries, not rulers of armies. Rulers of forgetting. Picture them less like villains with faces, and more like architecture. Like gravity. Like something built into the structure of this lower reality, designed to keep a soul oriented downward instead of upward. I'm not asking you to imagine demons with pitchforks chasing you through a hallway. That's not what this is, and honestly, that image makes the whole thing smaller than it actually is, almost cartoonish, almost easy to dismiss. The real picture is quieter than that, and far more unsettling once it actually lands. Think of the Archons instead as forces that shape perception itself, quiet, structural, almost invisible, because they're so deeply built into the system you live inside that you mistake the system for simply how life works. You don't question gravity either. You just live inside it. Here's the part that always gets me, every single time I think about it. The old texts say the Archons couldn't actually touch the soul directly. The soul is too high, too bright, too far above their reach, like trying to grab smoke with your bare hands. You close your fist, and there's nothing there, just the memory of where it used to be. So they needed another way in. Something that could pass through where they couldn't. Something the soul itself would willingly carry. The way a person might carry something dangerous without ever checking what's inside the box. They needed an emotional gate. Something that felt completely natural. Something a person would never question, because questioning it would feel like questioning their own humanity, their own right to feel anything at all. That's the genius of it, honestly. If I'm being completely transparent with you, I find this part almost unsettling in how elegant it is. There's no force involved, no violence, just quiet inheritance, generation after generation, feeling after feeling, until nobody even remembers a time before it. You don't fight a trap you don't know is a trap. You just live inside it and call it personality. You call it just how I am. You build an entire identity, an entire life, on top of bars you never once noticed were bars, because they were never cold or metal. They were warm. They felt like you. So the Archons, according to this hidden teaching Mary Magdalene carried, didn't give humanity chains. They gave humanity feelings. 4 of them, each one shaped to lock a different door inside you, each one disguised well enough to pass as ordinary, even necessary, even noble at times. And she named them, quietly, carefully, to people she trusted enough to hear it, in rooms small enough to keep a secret, because some truths aren't dangerous because they're false. They're dangerous because they're true at the wrong time, to the wrong ears, in a world not yet ready to hear them out loud. There is a moment I keep coming back to. A small room, lit only by a few low flames. The kind of light that makes shadows move slower than they should, stretching long across the floor like they're listening too. A handful of people sit close together, not because the room is small, but because what's being said feels like it shouldn't travel past these walls. Mary Magdalene sits among them, calm in a way that doesn't match the weight of what she's about to say. Her hands are still. Her voice, when it finally comes, doesn't rise or fall the way most voices do when they're about to say something heavy. It stays even, steady, like she's already made peace with whatever this knowledge will cost her. Someone asks her, quietly, almost afraid to ask, why suffering feels so heavy, why it clings, why some feelings seem to arrive from nowhere and take over a person completely, like a tide nobody invited, pulling them under before they even realize they've stepped into the water. She doesn't answer right away. She lets the silence sit there a moment, the way you let water settle before you can see clearly through it. The flames shift. Nobody moves. Then she says something like this, not word for word, but in spirit. These feelings you carry like they are your own nature. Some of them were never yours to begin with. Some of them were placed inside you, like seeds in soil that didn't ask to grow them. The room goes still. Someone leans forward, the way you lean forward when you're afraid you might miss something you'll need later. Someone else looks almost afraid to keep listening, the way you feel right before a truth rearranges something inside you permanently. And that's the moment, if you ask me, where everything shifts. Because up until then, every person in that room believed their inner storms were simply what it meant to be alive. That's just what a human does. They get angry, they get scared, they fall into despair, they envy what they don't have. Nobody had ever told them otherwise. She just told them otherwise. And once you hear something like that, really hear it, you can't fully unhear it. It sits in you afterward, low and patient, waiting for the next moment you feel one of those storms rise, so it can whisper, "Is this actually mine?" I think about that moment a lot. Not because it's dramatic, though it is, but because I think most of us are sitting in a version of that same room right now, just without the candlelight, without the flickering shadows, without even realizing we're waiting for permission to ask the question. We're waiting for someone to finally say the thing we've suspected, but never had the language for. So let's say it. The first one moves quickly. It rises in your chest before your mind even catches up, faster than thought, faster than choice. It feels like power. It feels like fire. It feels like finally standing up for yourself after being quiet for too long, after swallowing things you shouldn't have swallowed. I'm talking about anger. And I know your first instinct might be to defend it. Anger feels justified almost every single time it shows up. It feels like truth wearing armor, like the one emotion that finally tells the world exactly where you stand. But here's where Mary Magdalene's teaching gets uncomfortable. And I mean that in a good way. The way discomfort sometimes means you're standing right at the edge of something true. Anger, in this hidden teaching, isn't framed as wrong. It's framed as borrowed. A current that moves through you so fast and so hot that it doesn't leave room for anything else. No reflection, no stillness, no real clarity. While anger is burning, you cannot see anything except the thing you're angry at. Everything else disappears. That's not strength. That's a narrowing, a tunnel where a wide open field used to be. The old esoteric idea is that the Archons designed anger specifically because it disguises control as power. You feel like you're finally in charge of the moment when anger takes over. You feel sharp, certain, in command. In reality, the moment is in charge of you, and you're just along for the ride, mistaking the speed for strength. I'll be honest with you, I used to think my anger made me decisive. I thought it meant I had backbone, that I wasn't going to be walked over. Looking back, I think it just made me loud at the wrong times and silent about the things that actually mattered. There's a difference between conviction and combustion, and for a long time I confused the two completely. Mary Magdalene's teaching suggests anger was placed in the human soul to keep it reactive instead of reflective. A reactive soul never has time to remember where it came from. It's too busy putting out fires the Archons lit in the first place, running from one flare-up to the next, never once stopping to ask why the matches keep appearing. That's the first lock. The second one doesn't burn. It freezes. It's fear. And before you tell me fear is just survival instinct, let me be clear. I'm not talking about the kind of fear that pulls your hand back from a hot stove. That's the body protecting itself, a fast and useful signal. And that's not what this teaching is about at all. This is about the fear that shows up when nothing is actually threatening you. The fear of being seen. The fear of being wrong in front of people. The fear of stepping into something bigger than the version of yourself you've gotten comfortable being, even when that version is small, even when it's quietly miserable. That kind of fear doesn't protect your body. It protects a cage, and it convinces you the cage is just the size of the world. In this older esoteric current, fear is described as the foundation emotion, the one the other three are built on top of, like a basement holding up the rest of the house. Without fear keeping you small first, anger wouldn't have anything to defend, despair wouldn't have anywhere to fall, and envy wouldn't have anything to compare against. Fear comes first. Everything else just builds rooms on top of it. I used to think fear kept me safe. I think now it kept me waiting. Waiting for permission that nobody was ever going to give me. Waiting for certainty that never arrived, because certainty was never the point. The point was to keep me standing still long enough to forget I had somewhere to go at all, that there was a door, and it had been unlocked the entire time. Mary Magdalene's teaching frames fear almost like fog, not loud, not dramatic, just thick enough that you can't see past your own front step. And a soul that can't see past its front step never goes looking for the rest of the house. It just stands there, year after year, convinced the porch is the whole world. That's the second lock. Quiet, patient, almost invisible, because it doesn't ask you to do anything. It just asks you to stay where you are, and somehow that's enough. There's a feeling that shows up sometimes when nothing has technically gone wrong. You're not in danger. Nothing has been taken from you today. Nobody left, nothing broke, nothing failed. And yet, something inside feels like it's already over. Like trying doesn't matter. Like whatever you reach for will slip through your hands anyway, so why bother reaching at all? That feeling is despair. This one, I think, is the cruelest of the four, because it doesn't even need a real loss to activate. It can rise on an ordinary afternoon, in an ordinary room, for no reason you can point to, no event you can name. And once it's there, it convinces you it's permanent. It convinces you it's truth instead of weather, something fixed instead of something passing. In the hidden teaching attributed to Mary Magdalene, despair isn't presented as sadness. Sadness has a shape. It usually points back to something real, something you can name and eventually grieve and eventually release. Despair has no shape. It's described almost like a fog the Archons release specifically to convince the soul it has no way back to where it came from. Not things are hard right now. Something colder than that. More like, there was never a path to begin with, so stop looking for one. That distinction matters more than it sounds like it should. Because sadness moves. It comes, it does its work, it eventually softens and shifts into something else. Despair sits. It doesn't move through you, it settles over you. Despair tells you stillness is the only honest response left, that hope itself is naive, that anyone still reaching for something better simply hasn't faced reality yet. I've felt this one personally enough times to know it doesn't argue with you logically. It just lowers the temperature in the room until you stop expecting warmth at all. You don't decide to give up. You just slowly stop noticing you were still trying. And I think that's exactly why this teaching calls it a manufactured feeling rather than a natural one. Real grief over a real loss moves through you and eventually softens, the way a wound actually closes. Despair doesn't move. It settles like dust over something the Archons hoped you'd forget you ever owned. Your own sense that things can change, that tomorrow isn't obligated to look like today. That's the third lock. The one that convinces a soul there's no reason left to even try the door, so it stops reaching for the handle entirely. The fourth one is the trickiest, because it never announces itself as a problem. It shows up looking like motivation. It shows up looking like ambition, like drive, like the very thing that's supposed to push you forward. Sometimes it even shows up looking like love, like admiration, like simply wanting good things for yourself. It's envy. You see someone with something you don't have. Their peace, their success, their ease, the way life seems to bend a little kinder around them, and something tightens quietly in your chest. It doesn't always look like jealousy on the surface. Sometimes it looks like comparison disguised as self-improvement. I just want what they have. I just want to be further along by now. Small phrases. Familiar phrases. The kind you've probably said to yourself more than once without thinking twice. And underneath them, a soul slowly turning its attention outward instead of inward, trading its own path for someone else's mirror. This, according to the esoteric teaching tied to Mary Magdalene, is the cleverest design of the four, because envy doesn't trap you in stillness like fear, or in fire like anger, or in fog like despair. Envy keeps you moving, just in the wrong direction, like a current pulling you sideways while you think you're swimming forward. It keeps your eyes locked on someone else's life so tightly that you stop noticing your own light entirely. And a soul that never looks at its own light eventually forgets it was ever glowing in the first place. I think this one is the hardest to confess to, honestly, because admitting envy feels like admitting smallness, like admitting you weren't as secure as you wanted people to believe. But I'd rather be honest with you than polished. I've envied people for things that had nothing to do with my actual path, things that wouldn't have even fit the life I was building, and every single time, it pulled me further from whatever I was supposed to be doing instead. Envy is the lock that disguises itself as a window. It convinces you you're looking outward to learn, to grow, to get inspired, when really you're just looking outward to forget what's already inside you, waiting quietly for your attention. Four locks: anger, fear, despair, envy. Each one feels personal. Each one feels like it belongs to you completely, like it's stitched into the fabric of who you are. And according to this old, quiet teaching, none of them ever did. Here's where this stops being heavy, because I don't want to leave you sitting in the weight of all that without somewhere to put it down. There's a way through it, and it's simpler than you'd expect, though simple doesn't always mean easy. Nothing about undoing an old pattern is ever easy. The teaching isn't destroy these feelings. You can't destroy weather. You also can't outrun something built into the structure of this lower world just by trying harder one afternoon, gritting your teeth and willing it away. That approach burns people out, and it doesn't actually touch the root. The teaching is closer to this. Notice the feeling without becoming it. When anger rises, you watch it rise, instead of letting it drive. You feel the heat without grabbing the wheel it's offering you. When fear whispers, stay small, you notice the whisper, instead of obeying it instantly the way you always have before. When despair tells you there's no path, you remember that despair has no real authority over truth. It only has authority over your attention, if you hand that attention over willingly. And when envy turns your eyes outward, you gently turn them back toward your own light, even if that light feels dim that day, even if it feels like barely anything at all. This is what I believe Mary Magdalene was actually trying to protect. Not avoidance of feeling, not pretending you're above it, but freedom from being owned by it. There's a difference between a soul that feels anger and a soul that becomes anger. Between a soul that feels fear and a soul that obeys fear permanently for years, without ever once questioning it. The witnessing itself, according to this teaching, is what the Archons can't reach. They can plant a feeling. They can't plant the awareness watching that feeling unfold, because that awareness was never theirs to build. That awareness, in this older tradition, is the part of you that was never theirs to design. It's older than the trap. It existed before the four locks were ever placed, quiet and unclaimed, waiting for you to remember it was there. I genuinely believe this matters more right now than it ever has. Not because the world is more dangerous, but because there are more reasons than ever to react instantly, compare constantly, fear loudly, and despair quietly. Everything around you is built to pull your attention outward, to keep you reacting before you can reflect. The locks have more triggers now than they did in that candlelit room centuries ago, which means the awareness behind them matters more, not less. So here's where this actually leaves you. Not back at the beginning, but somewhere new, somewhere you can't quite return from, even if you wanted to. You know their names now: anger, fear, despair, envy. And once you know a lock by its real name, it stops working on you the same way it used to. Not instantly, not perfectly, but differently from this point forward. I don't think carrying those 4 feelings all these years was proof of your weakness. I think it was proof of an old design finally being noticed, finally being seen for what it actually is instead of what it's always pretended to be. And noticing is where every real change has to start. Mary Magdalene didn't whisper this teaching, so people would feel ashamed of what they feel. Shame was never the point. Shame just keeps the locks turning. She whispered it so people would finally start asking the harder question, again and again, for the rest of their lives. Is this feeling mine, or is this a feeling I was simply taught to wear? That question is yours now. Carry it forward. Every time one of those 4 locks rises in you, you get to pause and ask it again, a little more clearly each time. That's not the end of anything. That's the door, finally open, waiting for you to keep walking through it. Now, before you go, I want to be honest with you. YouTube has completely stripped monetization from this channel. They want this knowledge filtered and sanitized. I'm not stepping back. I'm not toning anything down. I'm pushing further in. But I cannot sustain this mission alone. I need your support to keep this work alive. If anything in this video has shifted something in you, click the link in the description and join me on Patreon. The second you step inside, you unlock a deeper layer of this work entirely. Unfiltered esoteric teachings reserved only for members, private audio transmissions, and material that will never be allowed on this platform in any form. Most people will sense it and still go back to sleep. You will not.